What's going on, guys? It's Greg here. Just wanted to do a video about gangs after SHTF. Um, so I've been thinking about this for the past few days, and it motivated me to make a video about it because I wanted to share my thoughts with you guys. So the big question is, what's going to happen to gangs after SHTF? And that's kind of something that I've been thinking about the last few days. So after rule of law is diminished, and there's a collapse of society and there's no police, rule of law is totally gone. What's the criminal elements of society? What are they going to do? Obviously we know that they may potentially, try to break into our homes. They may potentially try to steal our stuff. They may form groups and create marauder groups. All that stuff's been kind of talked about already in the prepper community, but nobody's really talked about organized crime and gangs and what they're going to actually do. Everything's kind of just focused on like the marauders and the lone bandits out there that are going to be roaming around and looting and stuff like that. But what about the organized crime? What about all the big mafias, the mobs, the street gangs, the big ones? I'm not going to name any names, but I think you guys know. You got street gangs, you have mafias, you have mobs from different countries, different cultures. You have you have your street gangs, your inner city gangs, your mobs, your mafias, your local gangs. So what are they gonna do after this? After crap hits the fan, are they gonna? This is one thing that I was thinking that potentially could happen, is that they may go to war with each other, and they may use it as a time for them to conquer more territory and expand their territory and kind of settle feuds that they've had with other gangs. So but before I get more into that, let's just classify what type of gangs am I talking about here. So this could be your local street. So I'm going to break it down. You have your smaller scale gangs, which would be like your local gangs. Every town, every city has like local gangs. They're smaller. They're still dangerous. They still do bad stuff, but they don't have the size that a large gang or mob or mafia has. But they're still pretty dangerous. So you have your local gangs. Then you have your street gangs or inner city gangs. Examples of that would be like the Bloods, the Crips. Then you have your the ethnic gangs, which is like Latin Kings, MS-13. Those types of gangs. Those could also be potentially street gangs. Then you're gonna have your ethnic gangs, which is like the Irish mob, Russian mafia, Italian mafia. Everybody's, heard of the Italian mafia. Whatever, there's so many of them out there, but those are the big ones. Then you have your biker gangs. You have your Hells Angels, your Mongols, your outlaws. There's so many biker gangs out there. I don't know all of them, but that's just a small list. There's so many big, gangs. Then you have your Yakuza. You have your triads, which is Chinese. Yakuza is the Japanese. And you have your biker gangs. Then you also have your racial gangs. You have the, like the Black Panthers, the, white supremacist gangs, KKK, things like that, neo-Nazi groups. So what are all these gangs going to do after the crap hits the fan? What are they going to do? Now, in my opinion, personally, they're going to use the diminished law enforcement presence to, get revenge on other gangs and to settle their feuds that they have. So a lot of people, are familiar with the Bloods and the Crips, and that they have a feud between each other, and they've had it for a long time. Um, they hate each other, and it's this big thing. So potentially, if there's a SHTF situation, I would not be surprised if gangs like that, hate each other, are going to go to war, because there's not going to be, FBI is not going to be around, local law enforcement's going to be overwhelmed, the country's going to be in shambles. There's going to be lack of power, lack of resources. So in my opinion, they're going to go to war. And I think that, it may not happen everywhere, but I wouldn't be surprised if it happens across the country in various big cities, because a lot of the gangs in the big cities, they fight for control. They want to have control over the drug market, the sex trafficking market, prostitution, strip clubs, whatever, arms trafficking, especially drugs. That's how gangs make money. They make money by selling drugs. That's how they make money. They do all kinds of illegal stuff, racketeering. So they want to expand their territory. That's what keeps them alive. They need to have a large territory for them to make money and to exist, to make profit. So in my opinion, I think a lot of these gangs are going to seize that opportunity to expand into new areas that they weren't before. And I think they're also going to use it for revenge and getting revenge on other gangs that may have wronged them in the past, or whatever. Let's say one gang shot somebody from another gang. They're gonna get into like a war over that. I think that's gonna definitely happen. There's a lot of gangs as we speak right now that want to kill each other. They hate each other. The only thing that stops them is rule of law. They're afraid that if they go to war with the other gang, that they're gonna get arrested. SWAT team's gonna come, FBI is gonna come, and they're gonna go to jail. So that's why they don't do it now. But if all rule of law is collapsed, and it's apparent that there's no police services, or the police services are greatly diminished, they're gonna take advantage of that to get revenge on other gangs that wrong them, or they may try to just go to war to get more territory. If there's a competing gang in the same city, they're going to try to fight with that gang to gain control of their drug market, their illegal businesses that they have, their racketeering and all that stuff. They're going to try to push the other gang out so they can expand their territory. And in that process, they're going to have to, go to war with that other gang and maybe kill some other gang members. And that's how they expand, So I think we'll probably see that. I don't think it's going to happen right away. But I think maybe if it's like a large-scale SHTF situation, a grid-down event, I think after a week or two, once it's apparent that, the power is out, it's a major disaster and it's affecting, let's say, a whole area of the country or a whole city or maybe the whole country itself, what the gangs will realize, they're going to be like, okay, it's been about a week or two, the power's not coming back, now's our opportunity to finally settle our scores, or now's our chance to expand into these areas that we couldn't expand into before, and now's our chance to get our revenge and expand and assert our dominance over this particular city or this particular neighborhood. And that they're going to go to war with other gangs, in my opinion. They're going to go to war, and you don't want to get caught up in that. If you're a prepper, if you're a survivalist, if you care about your family and your country, you should pay close attention to this video. You don't want to get caught up in that kind of situation. Now, I'm not a gang expert, I just have common sense. I didn't work in the FBI, I don't know all these gangs and everything. I have an interest in it. I've watched a lot of documentaries about, gangs and stuff. Um, I remember there was this really popular show back in the day. It was called Gangland. And every week they would do a whole documentary about a different gang. It was very interesting, and I highly recommend that you guys, watch some of those shows, so you get a feel for how gangs operate. One thing I will say is that gangs are very vicious, and they will resort to extreme violence. When it comes to gaining territory, defending their gang, defending their fellow gang members. They're very violent, so you need to be properly prepared to deal with them in case you come across one of them. And the best way to deal with them is you need to have a firearm. You need to be able to use deadly force if you have to. If it's a worst case scenario, and that's obviously a big topic, and you need to know your deadly force laws. Every state is different. I'm not going to really get much more into that, but you should definitely have a concealed carry permit. You should have some firearm in your home so you can defend your family, and defend yourself, especially if you're moving through an area where there's going to be gang activity, where there may be a gang war in progress. You don't want to be caught in that situation with, nothing. You want to have some kind of, weaponry to defend yourself. And even if you have weapons, it may not be enough because they have such big numbers. They roll in big groups. So even if you're a really well-trained person and you're a very good shooter, you go to the range every month or every week or, very frequently, and, you do a lot of advanced shooting. They have huge numbers and they're very well armed. So in that situation, it doesn't matter how much training you have. You have to escape and evade. You can't go up against a superior force. Unfortunately, even they may have 20 or 30 guys, and you're just one guy with a pistol. What are you going to do against 20 or 30 guys? Even if you're Rambo, you're going to have to retreat, and unfortunately that's just the way it is. But don't let your pride get in the way and let yourself get hurt or your family get hurt in that situation. It's better to escape and evade, rather than confront them, because these are very violent people. Gang members, especially those bigger gangs that I mentioned, they're extremely violent. They will kill people just to show that they don't screw around. They will injure you just to teach you a lesson. These are not normal people like us. So you have to keep that in the back of your mind. Also, in a defensive situation, if you have to actually use force to defend yourself or defend your family, somebody else, you have to be sure that, you have to make sure that you act quickly and aggressively, because you may not get a second chance, especially if you're dealing with one of these violent gang members. You may have a small window of opportunity to take action. And if you don't take action, then they're gonna take action against you, and that's just the way they work. So they're extremely vicious. I've seen gangs operating. When I was a bouncer, I worked in an inner city nightclub. You guys have heard me talk about this before, but I worked in an inner city nightclub. I'm not going to say where or anything like that, but I worked there for a few years, and 3, sometimes 4 nights a week. But typically I would work, 3 to 4 nights a week I would work. This was, years ago, but it was an inner city nightclub, and there was a lot of gangs that would show up to the club. They would roll with like 10, 20 guys, and they would show up to the club, and you can tell that they were there because they would throw up gang signs and stuff. And They would just be, sometimes they would show up to the club just to ambush another person that was there that they, didn't like, or something happened or whatever. And I remember one night, I was walking home from work. I was leaving the club and I was going home, and I saw this guy, walking by himself, and then all of a sudden I saw like 3 cars drive up to him in a parking lot. It was like an open parking lot, it's the middle of the night. They drive up to him, they get out, there's like 20 or 30 guys, and they just start beating him up, like on the ground, just like kicking him and stomping on him. It was really vicious. And I ran over and I yelled, and they all scattered, and they ran into like all their cars, and then they drove off. And later on, the guy got up and he started walking towards me, and it turns out that they actually cut his, I think they cut his neck. Yeah, they cut his neck here. They tried to kill him. They were going for his artery, and they actually hit his artery. Didn't look like they fully cut the artery. They must have just, cut it a little bit, because he walked up to me and he said, help, help. And he was like, he looked like he was really weak. And you could just see, like, when the pulse from his heart was beating, you could just see the squirting of the blood coming out of his neck. It was just like a sprinkler, just coming out every second, And at that point, I was like, wow, this is crazy. That was the first time I ever actually saw something like that in the real world. So at that point, luckily there was some cops that would hang out at the club, and I ran back and I got them, and they ran over and called the ambulance. But, it was very vicious. And I've seen a lot of other things like that. I've seen gangs attack other gangs in the club, and it turned into a riot where you had like 40 guys fighting each other, and I was trying to, throw them out of the building and stuff like that, and it was really crazy. So they can be very vicious. So you need to make sure that when you are in a defensive situation where you're dealing with somebody like that you're very decisive, and whatever you do, you have to make sure it's quick, because they're not going to give you a second chance, and you better make sure that you thought everything through. First of all, that you're legally justified to defend yourself and use force. And then second of all, your plan of attack, how you're going to actually defend yourself, your strategy to get away, all those things, you need to think it through and figure out how you're going to escape and survive, and make sure you act decisively, because if you screw up and it doesn't work the way you plan, they're gonna harm you, they're gonna kill you. They're not ones to mess around with, these types of people. So but basically, I think that they're going to get into wars. They're going to try to expand their territory. And if you're a prepper, you should be aware of that. You should understand that if you're bugging out, on foot, or if you're trying to escape a city and you're trying to get to your bug out location, you should make sure that you're aware of, the bad areas, where there could potentially be gang activity, where there's, known gang activity in that city that you live in, or in your area that you live in, or, the area that you're going to be passing through if you're bugging out, or if you're escaping from work and you're trying to get home from your job and you have to walk through, a city. You should definitely be aware of, where are the bad areas, where are the high crime areas, where are the areas where there's known, gang activity, and you should try to avoid those areas as much as possible. And, you should also try to, if you do have to cross through those areas, you want to make sure you're stealthy and you do so quickly. You don't want to linger around in an area where there's gang activity, where there's a high crime area. You don't want to just be lingering. You don't want to stand out. You want to move through quickly. You don't want to, stand out. You want to get in, get out, pass through, and get out. Pass through as quickly as possible. And the last thing you want to do is, get caught up in a gang war. There could even be, you never know, there could be total shootouts in the middle of the street. And you may have to pass through that area or if you live in the city, there may even be gang wars around your neighborhood, depending on where you live. I don't live in a city, I live in the countryside, so I can't relate to that. But, the closest city is pretty far, so I'm not really too worried about it. But, I do have to work in the city, so, you should be aware of those areas, and then you should be aware that after SHTF, a lot of these gangs may try to take advantage of that to expand their territory, to wage war on other gangs, rival gangs, and stuff like that. So you should make sure that you're ready to handle that and ready to deal with that. Especially if you get caught in the middle of a gang war, and there's a shootout somewhere in the streets. You want to make sure that you take cover and you try to get out as quickly as possible. Escape and evasion is the biggest thing. You don't want to get into a shootout with a gang of like 20 guys or more. They're usually very well armed, so you definitely need to have multiple layers of security and multiple layers of self-defense. So I'll show you what I'm talking about. You don't want to just rely on one tool. Everybody just focuses on the firearm. And a firearm is great, but eventually you run out of bullets. If you're in a situation where you get into a shootout with a gang, or, you get caught in the crossfire between a gang war where they're trying to, invade your neighborhood or whatever, guns can malfunction. You can run out of bullets. They give your position away. So there are some drawbacks with a firearm, but you need to have layers. You can't just rely on a pistol. Because if your pistol breaks, you run out of ammo, whatever happens, malfunction, you should have some secondary things you can go to. So here I have a knife, this is my survival knife, but in SHTF situation, I could go to this if I have to. I would never want to use this, but worst case scenario, this is my backup. If my gun doesn't work, and my life is in danger and I have to defend myself, then I have to live. I'm not gonna let somebody kill me. So I have this as a backup, and then I have pepper spray as well. So this could be a deterrent. This is just bear spray, but bear spray is very effective against people too, and it fogs up a huge area. So you could fog up a big area and have a big effect on, if let's say you have a group of people that you're dealing with, you have 5 or 10 guys that are following you and they want to beat you up and take your stuff. You can use this pepper spray and just spray all of them, because this comes out like a fog. It's meant to stop a bear, so it shoots out like a fog, so you can just fog all those people, and they're gonna leave you alone, I'll tell you that. So have multiple layers of security and protection, personal protection. Don't just rely on one thing. And then also, I think another thing that is a potential with these bigger gangs, the mafias and stuff, they may even unite together to conquer and create their own neighborhoods, and because there's going to be if there's no rule of law, they may unite together to protect each other. They may form alliances because they realize that if they're individually, they're not going to be able to protect themselves from every other gang out there, because eventually, without rule of law, there's no law enforcement, there's no FBI, none of that. They know that eventually one of these hundreds of other gangs are going to try to take their territory or kill them or whatever. So they may even unite and create alliances, especially if they're kind of the same gang. So for example, if it's the Latin Kings and MS-13, they're both Latin American gangs, they may unite, or Bloods and Crips may unite, or some of the different mafias, may unite together. The Russians and the Italian mafias may unite. Some of the biker gangs may unite. The neo-Nazis, they may get together and form alliances. So that's another danger, I think, too. after SHTF, and you may have these super gangs that are going to just be massive. And not only are they going to unite and form alliances to protect each other, but I think also they're going to do that so this way they can obtain resources. They may figure out that, they need to eat, they need to drink water just like us. They're people too, so they need resources, they need to survive. And, grocery stores are not providing food. They have to get food somehow, right? So what are they going to do? They're not the kind of people that are going to grow their own food or hunt for it or anything like that. They're criminals, so they're going to go and take it, right? So if they unite together and they form alliances, they're going to have like much easier opportunities to go around neighborhoods and pillage and, go door to door, take people's supplies, take all your stuff. You may wake up one morning and you're going to have like 50 gang members outside your door, and they're going to say, we want all your food, we want all your weapons, we want all your water, and then whatever, and so you need to make sure that you can handle a situation like that, and you need to prepare for that and understand the realities of SHTF. It's not as a fantasy. It's going to be a bad situation if there ever is a SHTF situation in this country. It's not going to be this, fantasy that everybody thinks, where it's like this cool thing. It's not going to be fun, and especially if all these gangs unite together, that's going to be a big thing. And I personally think that's going to happen. I think there may be some gang wars, and I think also they're going to unite together because they're going to need resources themselves. And they realize that, they're going to need to obtain water, food, ammunition, things like that, to keep themselves going. So if they unite together, it'll be easier for them to obtain resources. And like I said, I think they're going to have groups that are going to go door to door, and they're going to steal people's supplies. That's what I think they're going to do, in my opinion. Because how else are they going to get food? How are they going to eat? They're not going to grow their own food or hunt. So they're going to go and take your food. And they're going to unite together and create these giant gangs. And they know it's going to be hard for them to be stopped too, because there's no law enforcement, or law enforcement's greatly diminished. So they're going to pretty much have a free reign. So I hope you guys enjoy this video. It's just a little bit of my thoughts on this topic. I think it's an important topic. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to my channel if you're new. Please feel free to comment and, post your opinions. Just be respectful to me and to other people. If I see that you're, negative or disrespectful, I'm just going to delete your comments or block you. I'm doing this for free. I'm taking out my time to share my thoughts with you guys and try to help you guys. I'm not doing this for money, so you should be respectful of that and be respectful of the time and effort that goes into every one of these videos that I make. So that's pretty much it. All right, guys. I'll see you on the next one. Take care. God bless.